All right, welcome back, everybody, to episode 58 of In the Flat Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Kill, joined this week by Jordan and Jess, as always. So, what a crazy week of college football this past weekend was. So, we're really excited to jump into this installment, talk about the latest college football rankings, discuss those big games from last week, and preview any of the big games ahead this week, which I think will take a little bit of a backseat to this previous week. Let's first dive into a little bit of news that happened over the last week. First, the Heisman straw poll has been released, kind of showcasing who's currently are the favorites to win the Heisman. Right now, C.J. Stroud is still winning. He's edging out Hendon Hooker. I think this is despite the fact that C.J. Stroud has coming off a couple bad performances. He had some stats here and there, but I mean, last week was really bad in the win. I think most teams in the Midwest, had a bad week because of the win this week. So, pretty interesting to see there. Um, so, if you're thinking about your favorite for the Heisman, there's a lot of different candidates you can think about. We mentioned C.J. Stroud and Hooker. There's also Drake May, Caleb Williams, Max Duggan, Blake Corum, Bo Nix, Stetson Bennett, Jay Daniels. A lot of good names out there. I think nobody has really took a stranglehold on this Heisman race. So, let's go around the horn here and see who you guys think is number one as far as Heisman goes. So, Jordan, who you got number one right now in the Heisman in your Heisman ballot?
Uh, right now, it's so hard. There's like you named off all these guys. Right now, if I had to choose a quarterback that's been consistent as of lately and has really shown up since week one, Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix would be my number one right now. I think Bo Nix has been dominating, has been putting up, crazy numbers, crazy touchdowns. I think Bo Nix right now is the most consistent quarterback we're seeing, but I don't know how it's going to be after that with that loss in the beginning of the year. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to next couple games. Blake Corum, if he has a monstrous game against Ohio State, then I think he's going to be the winner. I can even say Chase Brown of Illinois. If he has a monstrous game against Michigan, he gets his name looked at. He's already the leader in rushing yards, and he hasn't had less than 100 yards a game in any of his games. So that's looked at right now. But there's a lot of players that are not consistent, haven't been playing consistent. Hendon Hooker had a really bad game against Georgia. Um, C.J. Stroud had 76 yards this weekend. Bryce Young hasn't been looking great. But right now I could see Stetson Bennett or Bo Nix being the two front runners in my eyes.
All right, Jess, who do you got, man?
I got Caleb Williams. I've been high on him all year. I've been high on USC. I don't think they're really, true playoff contenders with how things are looking out. Pretty much everyone other than Georgia, really. But he's been incredibly efficient. The big thing for me though is that unlike a lot of these other guys, he's had so many of those kind of crazy highlight plays, like those Heisman moment kind of things that go viral on social media that makes everyone go wow. I think that could really play into his favor. Um, I mean, it feels like it's like for the most part, it's a quarterback award, but other second for me would probably be Corum. But like you guys were saying, no one's really separated from the pack. I think a lot of people thought it was just going to be that 2-man race between Stroud and Young this year, but they have not pulled away. Young and Stroud haven't looked tremendous, so it's up in the air for me.
All right. I think if I had to put it, I put it on Max Duggan for TCU. I really like what he's doing there. They're undefeated. He's putting up stats both running and passing. He hasn't had a really bad game compared to some of the other quarterbacks out there who's had bad games here or there. So he'd be my number one. Close behind him for me would be Blake Corum. I think he's doing a good job of really owning the line of scrimmage, helping Michigan really take care of business in the second half of all their games. So those would be my top two there. But a lot of games left. I think a lot of rivalry games, a lot of big games. I think that will really decide this over the coming weeks. Final bit of news here is South Florida. So South Florida fired Jeff Scott after a 4-26 record. Never got it going there. He was the former offensive coordinator there at Clemson, and they could just never get the ball rolling. It seemed like so. Um, if you guys are thinking about like who would the next coach be there, obviously there's some head coach names out there like Dan Mullen, former Florida head coach, Scott Frost, former Central Florida head coach, and there's a bunch of like young up and coming coordinators that are mentioned as well. Which route would you guys go with? Would you go with more of a veteran coach or more of a up and comer? And then if there's anybody in mind for you guys you think could be good at this job, Jess, do you have any thoughts on this one?
No one really comes to mind, but with a program like USF, I mean, they were quite the story back in the early to mid 2000s. You know, they had kind of risen to the point of being that Division 1 program. I think they got to a high of number 2 in the country in '07. And I mean, they're just kind of like at that interesting point. You know, they're no LSU, they're no Bama, they're no, you know, blue blood program, but I feel like they've got a decent enough reputation that they could land a decent name. Who that is, I don't really know at the moment. I feel like a lot of teams are going to be looking more so. A lot of coaches are going to be looking for again some of those bigger names. But for a school like USF, I think they would be better off going with a more established name, but I think they're going to get some younger coach who wants to prove it, who wants to show that he can build his own kind of program. So I think that's the direction they're going to end up having to take.
All right, Jordan, do you agree, or do you have somebody else in mind more on your side?
No, just looking it up, there's a lot of names being thrown around, like you said, Scott Frost. You have Deion Sanders. He's been thrown around for every coaching job that have been open. One I see is the former USF coach, Jim Levitt. He was the coach that actually coached them in 2007 when they were number 2, and took them to 5 bowl games. So that. But I definitely think they're going to go with a young assistant. I think going with Georgia's offensive coordinator, Oregon's offensive coordinator, Tennessee's offensive coordinator. A lot of the big teams that have been dominant offensively this year, I think a lot of those co-offensive coordinators will be gone, going to a head coaching job. But I think they want to start new. I think they want something different, and I think a young assistant, and you've seen a lot of young guys do a really good job right now of recruiting. Marcus Freeman recruiting. He's a young assistant. Was a young assistant. Now he's head coach. His recruiting. All that. Oregon's head coach Dan Lanning, young, recruiting really well. So I think USF's going to go somewhere young, assistant, close to home, kind of Georgia, Tennessee kind of area, southern states.
All right, if it was me, I think the answer's simple. Scott Frost. He was the head coach at Central Florida. They did awesome there. That's maybe more his bread and butter. More less pressure in that area. He knows how to recruit in that area. He knows how to build a program for that type of program, and I think he'd just be I think I can't say can't miss because obviously he's missed in other areas, but I think he'd just be a good pickup because he's a veteran coach. Maybe learn from mistakes in Nebraska, come in and do things. But I don't know the backstory about maybe why he was fired at Nebraska. I know there's some backstory there too, so it might not be a great fit right now. But if not, I would go obviously somebody that knows the state of Florida well. They can really lock up recruiting. And to your point, they can get in there and make some instant connections and build that program the right way. Not through the transfer portal, but mix the transfer portal in with some really good recruiting where you can develop some good players there. All right. Before we dive into the recruiting rankings here, I wanted to talk about last week's games because obviously they'll set the tone for the rankings we're about to talk through here. Let's first start with Georgia at Tennessee. I think this was kind of billed as the matchup of the week, but Georgia really just dominated this ball game, winning 27-13. It wasn't that close. Georgia just decided to kind of take their foot off the gas second half and just kind of warm down on the ground game and with defense. And really, Tennessee only scored 1 touchdown in this game, which is obviously a lot less they've been doing the last few weeks. So, Jordan, you surprised by this score? Surprised by Georgia? What did you think of this contest?
I think I would say I would be surprised, but I talk about it um, a lot lately. Is that if you Tennessee, you slow down the game, you start the game off, slowing Tennessee down, then you can control this game. And Georgia's defense and offense controlled this game from start of the half or their second drive because they fumbled their first drive. Their second drive till the end of the game, they controlled the game offensively and defensively, controlled the pacing, and everything. And that shows Tennessee is a team that if they get the ball first and score, they're gonna run the. They're gonna. It's gonna be a fast-paced game, and Georgia slowed it down and kept it at their pace and what they wanted, and that really hurt Tennessee's offense, and that's why the game was so one-sided.
All right, Jesse, any thoughts on this one? Any going into it, I think we all thought it'd be more of a shootout than to this kind of performance. Were you surprised by how Georgia was able to shut down Tennessee's offense?
A little bit. I mean, I thought with Nolan Smith out, that was going to be a bigger deal than it wound up being. Uh, yeah, I mean, Georgia really just came out there, punched Tennessee in the mouth after they fumbled that first drive. They held them to 3 on that, even though Tennessee had such a short field, and that was really as good as it got for Tennessee the rest of the way there. Jalen Carter had himself a heck of a game. Hooker was just under pressure. It felt like every other drop back. Georgia really just solidified themselves right now as the overwhelming favorite this year. I mean, I think a lot of people had them as the favorite, but I mean, I don't see anybody competing with them really, here on out. I mean, maybe if Tennessee with that kind of offense can meet them again in the playoffs on a neutral field, maybe they do a bit better. But I mean, it was quite a statement by Georgia.
No, I agree. I was not expecting this defense to show up. To your point, I thought the Noah Smith injury was going to really hurt them more than it did, but they kind of just reloaded and threw a bunch of guys out there at Tennessee and just dominated the game. So yeah, I don't see anybody at this point beating Georgia. Obviously, anything can happen throughout the rest of the year, but this looks like a pretty dominant performance and maybe more of the. We'll see more of the same here as we kind of march to the playoffs. All right. The other big game was LSU and Alabama. This one we talked about it a bit. I think we all thought that there was no way Alabama was going to come here and lose to LSU after their performance against Tennessee. That Brian Kelly probably hadn't got this program where it needed to be yet, but he did get this win. He got Daniels with the last second 2-point play to beat Alabama in overtime. So impressive performance by LSU. Brian Kelly finally gets his win over Nick Saban. Glad he waited until he left Notre Dame to do that. So good job, Brian. All right, Jordan, what did you think here of the LSU performance?
Um, I think it was more. I think I don't want to take anything from LSU. It was a big game, a good game. I think they played really well, and I think it's a gutsy call to go for 2, but you don't know, what happens after that. You go for 1, you make the field goal, and then Alabama tightens up, and it's Nick Saban. You can't really net bet Nick Saban out ever, and so, but it was a huge win for LSU, a huge win for not Alabama fans, and all that. But I think right now what we're seeing is Alabama is really undisciplined. A lot of penalties, like stupid penalties. Like watching the game a couple weeks ago, Will Anderson just makes offside penalties and things like that often. And I think the discipline right now for Alabama is what's killing them and what's hurting them so much, and ultimately knocked them out of college football playoff contention, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But a big win for Alabama or LSU. Alabama, stat wise, controlled this game, but LSU found a way to keep themselves in it. So, not a lot to say, just because overtime win by 2, but Bryce Young didn't play that well. He had a lot of passing yards, but he passed for 52 attempts, so not so impressive as we've seen. So, but big win for LSU.
For sure. So, Jess, on your perspective on this, is there starting to be some cracks in that Alabama armor? Because this would mean this would be I think 5 years. Is this 5 years now they haven't won a title? Something like that. I could be wrong in there, but what do you think? I mean, is the Alabama dynasty starting to crack a bit here?
It's so hard to say because especially with how different college football is from the NFL. I mean, the closest comparison I guess we would have for the Nick Saban Alabama is the Patriots. And everyone's like, "Oh, the Patriots dynasty's done after they lost in like 2007 and then again in 2011 and they didn't win it again until 2014." But I mean, currently Alabama once again has the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Nick Saban has shown that it might take him maybe an extra year, but he always adjusts. He always evolves. The early 2010s Alabama teams were dominant on the ground. Ground and pound football, defense, and then over the past couple of years, Alabama's entered their name into wide receiver U conversation. I mean, with how many first rounders they've put out there. I think LSU learned from Auburn last year when that game went to 4 overtimes against Alabama, and Alabama just narrowly pulled it out. And I think LSU's mindset was that either we get it and we win, or we don't and we lose. But which one of us has more to lose here, Bama or us? And so they went for it. They got it. They've all but knocked Alabama out. I think ESPN still says they have a 17% chance to make the playoff. But maybe it's, again, they don't win it this year. That's certainly how it's looking, and they're going to need a miracle to get in Alabama. But saying that the dynasty is done, I'm not quite ready to say that until they start not having number 1 recruiting classes and the most 5-star guys coming in next year. So,
No, yeah, I'm with you there. I think he is. I think he had the wrong hires. I think Bill O'Brien, while is a decent coach, I don't think he does the right type of offensive system that can really be dominant in college football. Like the way they use Bryce Young is just not the best way to use him. And I feel like he's just kind of slogging at times until the end of the game, and they just tell him to go out there and make plays, and that's when he usually is effective. So that was that. And I think with Brian Kelly, I think he made the right call. To your point, I think he probably saw that Alabama is a more talented team. They're eventually going to wear LSU down in overtime. Like he said afterwards, if you told me I have one shot to win against this team, I'm going to take it, and that's what he did. So good for him. I think he used the play that Notre Dame used on Florida State when Florida State was number 1, and they called the penalty. So this is not the look of Irish back then, I guess. But good job, Brian, getting this victory. Speaking of Notre Dame coaches getting victories over top 5 opponents, let's move on to Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish here. I know it's just Jess's favorite segment of the show usually. But I think when we last left Jess, he said he didn't see how we can beat this Clemson team with that defensive line. But I will say, me and Jordan were there in attendance for this game. Maybe me and Jordan need to go to all the games. Is this how they're going to play? But it was probably the best performance I've seen Notre Dame have in I don't know how long, but against a top level opponent, they were just all over the ball, all over the quarterback. The defense was just playing lights out. The offense, while they didn't have a quarterback, they ran the ball right down the throat, and they couldn't do anything about it. They knew we could have passed, and they still let them run down. So, really dominant performance by Notre Dame. Jordan, what were your thoughts? What were your takeaways from the game? What was that atmosphere like there in South Bend?
Oh, that game, the atmosphere was so hype. The fans at Notre Dame rushed the field, but we couldn't take the goalpost. We tried. I think they all tried, but there was security around it. So, but what really I take out of this game is Notre Dame's defense flies around. They look more complete now. Watching the game, they flew. Everyone was on the ball. Clemson couldn't really do anything, but it showed again. DJ did not look good. He threw a 96-yard pick six. I don't know who. Like, it was a really bad. I don't know if he's throwing a back shoulder, but the guy was still running towards the end zone, and he underthrew it right to the Notre Dame receiver. But also Notre Dame's special teams. Another block punt. This, it resulted in a touchdown in this one. So Notre Dame right now looks their besides quarterback, their run game looks good. Their defensive line, safeties, corners, look good, and they're young, and it's going to be that way for a while. The I'm pretty sure the FBS Player of the Week was Benjamin Morrison with his, he had 2 picks this game, multiple tackles. The biggest thing I see from Clemson is they put their true freshman quarterback in the second drive of the second quarter, backed up on their 5-yard line, behind their 5-yard line. He threw an interception. In that environment at Notre Dame, sold out crowd, backed up like that, it just looked like Dabo wasn't sure what he should do at that point because he was losing. So, but big win all around for Notre Dame. Offense, defense, special teams, all look great, and the environment there was excellent and amazing. The fans were really involved and really into this game.
Yeah, no, Benjamin Morrison definitely. He was all over the field with a couple of interceptions and really defending the receivers very well. Fun fact: his dad Daryl played in the NFL for 4 or 5 years for Washington, and it was a star in college in Arizona as well. So he definitely has some good genes there from his dad. Jess, what's best for you, man? I don't know if you got a chance to check this game out. I know you were traveling this weekend. If you did, well, how surprising was it to see this Notre Dame performance? I know we joke on here, but obviously even me and Jordan were impressed. We knew that we felt like Notre Dame could win this game, but the way they came out in this is how I thought Notre Dame was going to look all year. I felt this defense was going to play this way because they have the players to make them to play a game like this. But what was your impressions?
This Notre Dame team confuses me. They will lose to Marshall and then go out and just manhandle Clemson. Nothing about the Irish makes sense. I cannot put my foot down as to what it is. Are they drinking some kind of special water one week and then not drinking it the next? Is the luck of the Irish truly random like that? I don't know. Clemson has been disappointing, despite this being their only loss. They have been disappointing all year. They don't exactly have the toughest schedule, and yet they struggled. But I thought, off the backs of some of those guys on that defense, Brian, Brees, Miles, Murphy, these guys who are going to be like top 15 picks this year in the draft. I thought they would be able to go in there and get the job done, maybe keep it low scoring. I don't know. But I guess there's not much more time, but I guess I'll be picking Notre Dame the rest of the way. I don't know anymore.
No, I think obviously, as I've listened to a lot of media this weekend, I was driving back from South Bend. The common thing is like this Notre Dame team is not good. How could Clemson lose to this Notre Dame team? They lost to Marshall and Stanford. But I think people keep getting it. This is Marcus Freeman's first year as a head coach. The first game of the season was against Ohio State, where they played well. The second game was against Marshall, so he got them up really high for Ohio State. They were disappointed they lost, and it's always tough to get your emotion back in check for that second game after that big opponent. Marshall came in and played a really good game. The Stanford game is more confusing to me, just because it's kind of they felt like they had things going. I think part of the reason that is the quarterback situation. I mean, when you have Drew Pine who really struggles to throw the ball, it's very easy to defend Notre Dame at times, and Notre Dame's not playing a perfect game on the run. I mean, they could be taken. So, definitely causes that Jekyll and Hyde type of approach with Notre Dame. I think the next 2 games, I mean, they should be able to win against Navy and Boston College. Then this will be an interesting matchup down the road against USC in the final game of the season. So see if Notre Dame can kind of claw their way back into that one of those big bowl games at the end of the season. All right, the last game to talk about before we dive into the playoff rankings is just want to quickly touch on TCU beating Texas Tech. TCU won this game pretty good, 34-24. I think for the most part they kind of just had their foot on the neck of Texas Tech, but never quite put it down all the way. But they kind of just controlled this game. Offense played well, defense played well. Jordan, any thoughts here on TCU? Where do you expect them to come in tonight? Should they be in the top four?
I think so. We were talking before that we started the recording, and I think TCU right now. I think with the four undefeated teams, I definitely think all four should be 1, 2, 3, and 4. No particular, 2, 3, 4 could be whatever. Right? We all know Georgia's going to be number one. Georgia's the best team in college football right now, but TCU looks good. TCU looks dominant, both offense and defense, and they're really diverse in what they do. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball. Duggan can do it all as well. Make good plays, can get out of the pocket, and that's really where they excel, is getting out of that pocket and making those throws on the run. But their run game, their running back Miller averaged 7.5 yards a carry, averaged 7.5 yards a carry, had 158 yards with a touchdown. So just all around their offense is really consistent on both passing and rushing, and they look really good right now.
All right, Jess, any thoughts on TCU before we dive into these rankings?
I don't really have that much to add. Texas Tech kind of hung with them a little bit before TCU kind of just it was in the fourth quarter there. I think they outscored them like 21-7 or something, and they pulled away at the end. They did what they needed to do. They got the win, and yeah, they should absolutely be number 4.
All right. Well, we're stopping to the rankings. This is what we're here for. So they obviously just got released. So I'll kind of go through it slot by slot here. So let's go from 25 to 21. So I don't know if there'll be any surprises here, but I'm coming in number 25 is Washington, which makes its way back for Oregon get themselves a top 25 win, I guess. They have Kentucky at 24, Florida State coming in at 23. Interesting there. UCF coming in at 22. Illinois still hanging in there in top 25 at number 21. Any surprises there, Jordan? Anything you like? Oh, I'm surprised this team or disappointed this team? Anything like that?
Not really. I think that top 25, the last couple in I think are pretty consistent. I think the reason Washington got in is because they beat Oregon State, so they got pushed back in. I think that's the biggest reason why. And I think Florida State got pushed in just because Florida State, man, they look consistent at some points, but inconsistent at some.
They got an LSU victory, so probably not an LSU.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Win. Yeah,
the LSU victory really pushed them to where they are. I think the dominant performance over Miami this past weekend, 45-3.
Miami's terrible.
Really, really helped them out. So, I mean, that list is not so bad. I think there's teams that could, you could easily move all those teams around, especially Illinois. I honestly, if I was in the committee, I think I'd push Illinois out just because they lost to Michigan State. They lost to Indiana. So
yeah,
they lost to teams that they shouldn't be losing to. But other than that, I think that's a pretty good area for those teams and a good start of the top 25.
All right, let's dive into the top 20 now. Number 20, Notre Dame. 19, Kansas State. 18, Texas. 17, Tulane. 16, North Carolina State. So, Jess, any surprises from that? You got Notre Dame now crawl their way out from being unranked to number 20. You got Kansas State hanging in the top 20. Well, I'm surprised after their loss. They're hanging in the top 20. I'm still surprised Texas is just moving up this ladder. Like, they haven't beat anybody. But they're keep moving them. So they're 18 now. And then Tulane, I like to see them up there of another good win this past week. And then North Carolina State is just kind of hanging in there in that top 15-ish. So any thoughts from you on those, Jess?
I mean, I'm surprised Kansas State is still in the top 20 there, like you said. Texas, I mean, that was a good win just over Kansas State. So not surprised they moved them up. I mean, they got so much talent. The committee's going to love them. I mean, I heard someone saying that if Texas had the resume that TCU did last week, they would have been number 3 in the country or something like that. So, the committee They love Texas. They love the brand. It doesn't surprise me that they've got them moving up. Honestly, I'm a little surprised they didn't move them up higher, just again because of how much they seemingly love Texas there. Other
Yep.
than that, Notre Dame getting in there doesn't surprise me. I guess having them already top 20 is a little bit of a shock, but they had overvalued Clemson. That means it's going to look even better for Notre Dame. So I don't really have any complaints with that. Other than I don't know if I would have, you know, Illinois, like maybe Illinois drops out, Kansas State drops down to like 23. Maybe they move Florida State up, something like that, but
Yeah.
nothing crazy.
Yeah, all these teams, some have 2 losses, some have 3 losses. I think they can make a case where any of these should be above the other. It would all work itself out here, I think, over the next couple of weeks, for sure. All right, let's jump into the top uh, 15 here. So number 15, North Carolina. I don't think they have a lot of love for North Carolina. They're keeping them right around that same area with 1 loss. Number 14 is Penn State. I don't know why Penn State's at 14. UCLA is number 12. Ole Miss is number 11, and Clemson is number 10. So that's your 10 to 15 there. Jordan, any surprises in that list there? Are you surprised Clemson dropped that far, or maybe they should have dropped farther? Surprised at Penn State or North Carolina? Any surprises there for you?
No. Utah's 13. Tony missed Utah on 13. You went from 14 to 12.
I said 14 Penn State. Oh, yeah, I did not say Utah. Well, everybody knows, okay, Jordan?
I'm just saying. But can I go back to the other list? You guys had Kansas State. If you look at Kansas State's 3 losses, it's Tulane, TCU, and Texas, who are all ranked in the same area they are. So.
That makes a good point, yeah.
But the list, I think North Carolina should be up more. They beat teams. They score points. Their defense is not great, but they score points. And they've only lost, was it 1 game? They finally lose
To
2?
Notre Dame. They lost 1 game to Notre Dame, yeah. I
So
mean, I'm thinking they should definitely be above Penn State and Utah with both of them have 2 losses. They should be at least top 13. I don't know. That's my feeling.
top 13. I mean, I feel like they could be easily switched with UCLA, 12, 13.
Yeah.
Even Ole Miss. Those 3 teams, UCLA, Ole Miss, North Carolina, are the same.
I mean, if we're talking about good losses, I mean, Penn State, their 2 losses on the season are to Ohio State and Michigan, Doesn't really get much better than that. Yeah, sure, they were outclassed in those games, but to be around where they are, I think they're pretty good where they're at.
I just think of them like they haven't looked impressive, and there's games outside of those 2. Like they don't have a really good resume win on this list, and so and then they get blown out by Michigan. They keep it close and have the lead for like a little over 3 quarters with Ohio State, but then they end up just pulling, getting blown out in that game as well. I have no problem with being ranked or anything. I just feel like, there's probably some more deserving teams, but then you look behind them, and most teams have 2 or 3 losses too. So I guess you can make the case that they're right where they be. But I definitely think North Carolina should be above them. But that's all here or there. So
yeah, maybe 1 or 2 spots difference, but
Yeah.
again, I think they're right in that tier there. Where it's like just outside of the top 10.
Yeah,
That
for sure.
I'm pretty happy with them right there.
All right, let's jump into the top 10. So Alabama's 9. Well, they're 9, but on top of the fact that they lost 2 games, they haven't looked great in the other games. And
Clemson's 10, everybody.
Yeah, Clemson's 10. I said Clemson 10, didn't I not, Jess?
No, you did. You did. You asked about if they should have dropped more, which I was thinking about. It's just so, again, it's so hard to say with them because of how just there's no denying the talent on the team. But they feel like they're a better version of Texas A&M where they've got all this talent, but it's just something's not clicking. I don't know if it's coaching, if it is just, obviously Dabo has not lost the locker room, but I think he just needs to make that change at quarterback. He
Yeah, let's go
needs
with
to
it at
make
this
that.
point. Yeah, they remind me a lot. I know people have made this comparison. They remind me of that Florida State team that just hung on to a lot of games they should have won, got to the playoff, and just got beat pretty badly. I mean, if they would have got through Notre Dame, they would have probably found a way to win the rest of these games, got to the playoff, and really got outclassed. I think so. I think for now they need to get the freshman quarterback ready to go for next year. That's what their focus should be. I think, and they still. I mean, honestly they clinched the side of the ACC already, so they're going to win the ACC. They'll go to a bowl game if they lose the rest of their games or not. If they, as long as they win the ACC. So at this point, I just throw the young guy in there, get some reps, and just focus on an ACC championship game. Um, all right,
We
so we
got
talk
Bama at 9. You
Bama
said.
9. Yep, Bama is at 9. Um, you know, you can say what you want. I guess their two losses are looked at as better than Clemson, which I guess I can agree because they had two close losses. So I mean, I guess I can see that point. USC's number 8. I'm surprised there. LSU is number 7, and then Oregon is number 6. So, Jordan, any thoughts there from that side? I'm personally surprised that LSU jumped USC, and Alabama is still ahead of Clemson. But I guess I can go either way on that piece. But what are you thinking?
No, you're 100% what I'm thinking. I don't know how LSU jumped USC. Yeah, I think it's because LSU beat Alabama. Um, that's it.
It's like
I really think.
that gives you like extra points if you beat Alabama.
Yeah,
So.
and then also the big reason they put Florida State in is so LSU doesn't look so bad because they lost to Florida State.
Yeah, so instead of losing a close game to a non-ranked team, they lost it to a top 25 team. So yeah, it
Yeah,
looks better for them.
but I definitely think USC should be in front of LSU. Um, I think other than that, that right there, just those flipped. I think Oregon's out of those 3 other teams in the top 10 with them. Oregon's the better of them. They right now with how their offense is playing. Right now, Oregon's my favorite to win the Pac-12. Their offense is rolling, their defense is rolling. They just are rolling.
Yep.
So, but other than that, I think if they flip flopped LSU and USC, that would be perfectly fine.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's jump into top 5. Number 5 is Tennessee. Number 4 is TCU. Number 3 is Michigan. Number 2 is Ohio State, and number 1, no surprise, is Georgia. I think that's the perfect top 5. That's exactly how we had it when we released our top 5 rankings earlier this week. I would be angry one way or another whether you had Ohio State 2 or 3, Michigan 2 or 3. I think they're very similar teams. So I think they're good what they are, and I'm glad TCU is finally in the top 4, with Tennessee obviously right in their heels there. So Jess, any thoughts on that top 5?
The only thing I would say is I think I'd have Michigan 2, Ohio State 3. Other than that, no real comments. Michigan's just shown to be a bit more consistent, a bit more dominant. Though I feel like Ohio State, with the talent they have and the kind of offense they can run, they can go to that next gear, as Joel Klatt put it. But other than that, I mean, Georgia, number 1, no question. Tennessee at 5, that's kind of where I thought they were going to fall. TCU should be number 4. And it's going to be really interesting going forward, because I'm pretty sure, with the SEC championship, Georgia's going to just crush that. But Ohio State or Michigan, one of them has to lose in a few weeks, and that means only one of them is going to make the Big Ten championship, which that whoever wins the Ohio State Michigan game should win easily. Then TCU is going to be competing for a Big 12 championship. Then you've got who's going to win the Pac 12. We're going to have some interesting decisions coming up in the next few weeks with how the committee's going to order them and what they're truly going to value here.
Yeah, because I mean, you have some different interesting decisions depending on how things fall. Like if you have a one-loss Oregon, USC, a one-loss Tennessee, and then if it comes down to a final play against Ohio State, Michigan, you have a one-loss loser of that game. Like there's some different thoughts of who should go where. Where does TCU fit in all that? How if they lose a game but win the Big 12, are they fully out? There's just a lot of thoughts. You have to be interested to see what the committee does. One thing I know is if LSU wins out, they're in because they're SEC champions. So that's going to be a tall task, obviously, being Georgia in a championship game, but they kind of control their own destiny. Georgia controls its own destiny, and the winner of Ohio State, Michigan control their own destiny. So I
I
think
mean,
those are,
TCU can. They got a big game this weekend against Texas. I think that's their toughest remaining game on the schedule. I mean, I don't know how you really view Baylor or Iowa State, but Texas, and it's
yeah,
at Texas, so TCU's got to take. They have to win out. I
It
feel like they
you can't.
they have to.
That's playing in Texas for TCU is like playing at home. Any state, any school in Texas you play against, it's not like you're going any farther than really.
Well, I mean, Texas is a big state. It's
Yeah,
not like Texas fans aren't fanatical. I mean, in Texas, it's like you got family, football, and God, and depending on the person, you order that how you want to. So I
right.
think they got themselves a test here, but I feel like again, as we were saying, a one-loss Pac-12 champ, you know, uh, it's gonna have to come down to an undefeated Big Ten champ. I feel like because again, Ohio State, Michigan, those are the only two threats they have on their schedules remaining. I think, and then
yeah.
I think we all expect Georgia to go undefeated. So, to where are they going to put Tennessee? How are they going to view that loss? If it comes down
Where
to
it becomes tricky is if LSU beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, and if it's a close game, and that's Georgia's only loss, then you have LSU and Georgia, and then you have Tennessee out there. So you still have that three SEC teams. Worst case scenario that I think most conferences are worried
Yeah,
about. So again, something to watch there at the end of the season. Any final thoughts, Jordan, before we move into next week's games?
yeah. Just I like the top four. I like that it's TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia. I don't think Michigan has really dominated a team all four quarters besides UConn and Hawaii. You look at their schedule. Yeah, you look at their schedule and their all the games. Yeah, the score is big, but it's all in the third, fourth quarter. They haven't really dominated, and Ohio State has dominated a lot of those small or Ohio, Iowa, schools like that. They've Rutgers, they destroyed. So I think that's why they put Ohio State up more than Michigan, and that's the only thing I have to say. I think Georgia's going to win out. I don't think LSU has a chance.
All right. Down Brian Kelly. All right. Let's obviously we're a little short on time here, so we're gonna go through these really quickly. I'm just gonna go around the horn here. You guys tell me who you think is gonna win. And if you think it's be close or not. So Jordan, LSU, Arkansas, who you got?
You were talking about before, thinking it's a trap game. I don't think so. I think LSU rolls. I don't think Arkansas is that good this year.
Okay. Jess, do you agree?
I do agree.
Oh God, I guess. Okay, LSU's going to win this game. I mean, Arkansas is going to win this game.
Wow,
It is a trap game. It's at Arkansas. LSU's coming off this a nice emotional victory over Alabama. They're going to come down, and then they're going to
you just want
get
to
hit.
give Alabama another shot there. They better not.
Well, hey, LSU has to lose twice. I think they'll win the next game against Texas A&M, but I think they lose this game. All right. Speaking of Alabama, they play Ole Miss as one of the only ranked matchups of the week there. So, Jordan, who you got, Alabama or Ole Miss at Ole Miss?
I got Alabama. I can't. We already saw one time when they got beat by Tennessee, and then they come back and just roll Mississippi State. I think it's going to be the same thing. I think they're going to roll Ole Miss, and we already saw Ole Miss have a pretty bad game against LSU. So I just think Alabama's going to bounce back.
All right. Jess, do you agree? Or are you picking the upset?
I do agree. Nick Saban has not lost two consecutive regular season games since 2007, his first year with Bama. I don't think that happens this year. I don't know if they roll them, but I think they win comfortably. And I think that that overhead just looming, could Alabama find a way to sneak back in is gonna stay another week, especially if your call for Arkansas beating LSU happens.
All right. I have Ole Miss winning this one, and we're going to go back to like it's 2007 because it's going to be 2 losses in a row for Nick Saban. All right, Washington and Oregon. Who you got, Jordan?
Uh, I like Michael Penix Jr. He's doing great things. But being in Oregon, like I said earlier, is rolling. And I don't think Washington's going to be able to stop him on offense, on defense. I think Oregon has a better team than Washington. So I think Oregon's going to win by at least 21.
All right, Jess, you agree?
I do. That's 3 in a row for our agreements here today, Jordan.
You're getting
I think
fired.
Oregon's got too much talent here. I think they're gonna come. I think it's at their house. I agree. I think this could be a 3-score game, 3-4 even.
All right, I have Washington with the upset again. I'm picking all upsets, I guess,
Kenny,
this week. I think
upset
Washington's going to
king today.
surprise Oregon, and I think Michael Penix Jr., my old Indiana boy, is going to go out there and shock the world, and they're going to have a crazy double overtime victory over Oregon. Is my prediction on this one. All right, TCU at Texas. Jordan, you got the upset, or you pick going for TCU?
I got TCU. I think TCU is more consistent in Texas. Texas really hasn't been consistent enough for me to, still think Texas is back. Quinn Ewers has been kind of inconsistent lately. And Duggan, he looks consistent. I think he's going to be able to carry this offense and carry, the team through Texas and, get the win. And the schools are only 2 hours and 50 minutes away from each other. TCU is in Fort Worth and Texas is in Austin. So it's not too far. I think TCU fans are going to travel well because it's in-state schools and also it's you're top 4. So you're going to travel well.
All right, Jess, who you got, man?
Jordan and I are 4 for 4 here. I've got TCU. I think they know that their fate is in their own hands. I think they're going to respond well to that. I think they're going to see that number 4 next to their name, and I think they're going to try and do everything they can to roll. I think TCU is going to make I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to have a real shot at the playoffs here, and I think this could be one of their big statement wins, just responding to the pressure. I think this is the hardest game they've got left on their schedule, and I don't know about the fans traveling well, but as Jordan was saying, Texas has been inconsistent, and I think that's going to be the case here. Not here, on Saturday. I think they're going to just come in, and TCU is going to do what they need to do. I don't know how many points they win by, but I think it's going to be at least 2 scores. At least 2 scores.
All right, I think we finally are in agreement on this one. I have TCU winning.
Yeah, if you didn't pick TCU, you're the one that would have voted every week for them to be number 1 or in the top 4 at least. All right, you better have picked TCU.
Of course, I picked TCU, and I heard John Robinson might be out for Texas in this game. And if he's out, there's definitely no way Texas is winning this game. I think it's gonna be close. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. I think it could like a 7-point game. I think it may come down to some last possessions, but I think it should be a good one there in Texas and Austin. And I think TCU pulls it out. It gets one of their signature wins, as you mentioned, Jess. All right. With that wraps up our podcast for this week, guys. Thank you for joining us. As always, follow us.
Top 5 something today?
No top 5 this week. I forgot to give you guys a heads up, and I knew you guys were going to have terrible lists if I didn't give you the heads up. So next week, we'll definitely do something, top 5 French fries in the United States, something like that. Don't tell me you probably like plain non-salt seasoned fries, right, Jess?
No. I'm just like, I don't know if I'd have a top 5. I mean,
French fries? Like
are you talking like
restaurant?
French fries? Restaurant, like hey, McDonald's, Burger King, all the places.
I mean,
see, that's too hard. You got like all these restaurants that are like your hometown restaurants.
I mean, Five Guys fries for me would be number 1 of that that list there. But I can't. Like, I don't go to McDonald's. I don't go to Burger King. I don't go to Wendy's all that often.
You've been in your life though, right? And you've tasted the fries. And you're like,
if you haven't been if
They
you haven't
are
been to
all
Wendy's in a while,
fine.
if you haven't
They're
been to Wendy's in a while,
fine.
they changed their fries.
And they're
So
terrible.
I mean, there's
Um,
a local diner near me that makes really good French fries, but that
Chick,
means nothing to
see
you guys.
see that's what I'm saying, Tony.
yeah, no. I would definitely have to set some parameters and rules for you guys
Chick-fil-A
before we.
has some good fries.
Chick-fil-A, McDonald's are the two best, I think. So,
Yeah,
I like those.
you're not. I like that.
Yeah. All right. We'll definitely have a different top five.
Basic AF here. Top 5 movies.
No, that's not basic. There's like 6 billion movies, and Tony's gonna think every movie we both say is wrong. We're
Oh,
not
it will
doing
be. It
that
will
one.
be. No, it will be. I mean, as if you're, if you're past the list or any indication, then you guys really.
Hey, man, our
Talk about.
candy
Hey,
list was pretty close to each other.
as
Relax.
we're talking about this, I did remember. If you guys like cereal, there's a new cereal out for the holidays. If you like cinnamon toast crunch, they have sugar toast crunch, and it's marvelous. So I suggest
Wait,
all
I'm
the
sorry.
fans.
Wasn't Cinnamon Toast Crunch already have cinnamon and sugar on it?
But this one just makes it more of a sugar cookie instead of a cinnamon cookie.
Oh my! So you just get fat.
Yeah, get all the sugar. The good parts.
Just
You know?
have
Oh.
dessert. Just go. You might as well just eat a slice of cake for breakfast, Tony.
Wait, do you not eat cereal at night?
No.
What is wrong
I
with
mean,
you?
I'm
never
okay.
like
I used to.
like
I
a
try to
midnight
avoid
snack. You
it
never
now
get hungry.
because I was putting on weight. But
Wait, you
I
never get
used
hungry
to.
for a midnight snack and just be like, "Oh, we got some milk
My
and cereal. I'm
midnight
gonna eat."
snack. I don't have anything after dinner now. I just it's more so just because I was putting on weight and that was one of the reasons. So I just try to cut that out. But yeah, cereal would be one of my go-tos in
Oh,
that.
Tony, I just want to say I did stop at McDonald's on my way home after the South Bend game or Notre Dame game. I went to 4 different ones. They were all closed.
Yeah, though. Well, there's not much out there at that time in that area for sure.
Well, I got into Michigan in like 2 seconds.
Oh yeah, that Michigan's pretty close. You should have stopped while we were there in South Bend. We probably should have tried some better food options while we were out there. But hey, the brats were good. They're at Notre Dame. I don't know if Jordan had some weird.
Their
What
hot
was
dogs
it?
are good. It was called a
What was it?
Domer dog. It had
Domer
grilled
dog.
onions and bacon bits and blue cheese on it.
Yeah, that looked pretty good. I don't know if Jordan you would like. I mean, Jess, you would like that because it had a lot of like seasoning and stuff on it. I know you're more of the.
I'm not that basic.
Yeah,
I
Jess,
just
they have
think
really good.
Seasoned.
They had plain. I don't know if they had just the plain chips and no salt, but we'll definitely check it out next time we're there.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm not a chip guy.
We can figure it out. We can get like chips and then get like a glass of water and just soak them so there's no salt on them. Yeah,
that'd be good. That'd be easier for him to chew too, so that'd be good.
Yeah, he's getting old.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for joining our conversation here. We'll have a good top 5 next week. We'll definitely not going to do fries, as Jess will ruin that for us. But we'll have a really good top 5 list, and we can go into it, whether it's movies, songs, whatever it is, and then we'll see what we talk about then. But as always, follow along on In the Flat Pod on Twitter, on our website, intheflatpodcast.com. We're continuing to post our weekly top 10 rankings every week. We'll throw some other articles out there as we can. If there's anything you would like to see us write about, feel free to shoot us a message. Shoot us out a notification on Twitter. We'll check it out. But till next week, guys. Talk to you then. Bye.